So already in the Eric's talk in the morning, GatsbyJS was mentioned as a name by a few times. So in this talk, I will try to describe what it really is, what it does, what it doesn't do, and how it best works with Plone, if that's in short. Yeah, so, well, I was already presented, so I've been doing Python on Plone for some time, and for the last few years, I've been mentoring the a good summer of code projects for helping to develop the Gatsby plugin for Plone, which is part of the topic of this talk. And I'm working at the University of Jyväskylä at Central Finland up there, and in this picture it's always warm and sunny somewhat up there. And in this picture, so it's a nice place. So to get better inside the topic, to understand what this is about, I will show you a pre-recorded demo of the GatsbyJS with Plone in action. So now on the left of the screen we have traditional Plone user interface with native theme. And on the right side, we have completely decoupled React.js, single-page React.js application showing content from the Plone, a theme content to Plone, and that now happens to be built with Gatsby.js. And it's completely decoupled, but it uses the content from Plone through Plone REST API using Gatsby.js architecture and now plugin. So under the hood on the right side, there is a complete React.js application with theme. Very simple, it's a landing page. But because it's a code, it can see React on the content it gets from the Plone, and then adjust for that content and build that landing page we will see. And yeah, so we can manage content on Plone as we are used to, but then that content will be updated on that Gatsby.js site. Small disclaimer, in this demo we see live content updates from Plone to the Gatsby development server, and that's still not out of the box with Plone. I will have another talk about that on Friday, how we can make it happen. Normally you need to see the changes from Plone, you need to restart the Gatsby development server, we see also on the right. But of course, when you're just moving, if you're really just building a theme, usually you have predefined content on Plone, and you only need to refresh the code you see, that styles you set, and the theme you are designing, and that works out of the box already. So now in the theme we just copy and pasted a lot of pages on a single folder, and that theme happens to render those contents on nice landing page style. So if it sees just a page, it will show the page with the big title and description of content. If it says the image, it will show the image as a big image. Or if it's a folder of things, then it will show we will render the folder as a column, as a row, and then map the pages inside the folder as columns for that. So big difference from what we are used in dealing just Plone is that with Gatsby.js, it's not practical to make what you get experience inside for Plone, but use Plone mostly like out-of-the-box experience with Plone UI, and then your teamer needs to figure out a nice way to map Plone content on your team. And this is one example. There's one folder on Plone called landing, and that folder may contain different kinds of Plone content types. And then the order of the content type and content of the content items will decide how the theme will look like at the end. So this example will show folders and pages and images. Just a very, very, very basic Plone content you have out of the box with Plone. So just out of the box with Plone, it's possible to use it to just map the content, edit the content, share permissions on Plone, and then map that folder for a Gatsby.js project that the designer can then use. And because it's completely decoupled, all use the REST API of the Plone, the designer of that theme does not need to have access to Plone at all, only HTTP access for the REST API. So also those teams, content editors, and the designers can work completely separately. Can be different places. And some feature here is so that I added one new field, because you can, in Plone, you can customize content types out of the box through the web, to the browser. I added one special field there where you can add your custom bootstrap CSS classes, and those will be then be applied for the team. And as I said, we can, because the team is code, we can react changes on the content. Now when I add title for the image, then the team will decide, okay, if the team has a condition, if this image happens to have a title, then let's show that title. Of course, because we could customize types, we could also add a checkbox for that kind of features. So that was one example what using GatsbyJS with Plone would mean in action. Now at the end we cleared the folder and everything disappeared. Okay, so let's take a few steps backwards and think about what's GatsbyJS now really is what we saw. So GatsbyJS is, at first, it's the name of the framework or the tool that you can use to make React-based web apps, websites or web applications. So they see themselves as some kind of React-based website and application compiler, generator and compiler. So they hide all they try to be very user-friendly. You just install GatsbyJS and generate a project template and then run one command, and then you can start creating new React-based web app or site. They hide all the difficulties of compiling and configuring React or that JavaScript development environment behind, just like Volta Starter does for you. Besides of that, it's also takes content from many sources, so it's a mash-up environment that's used GraphQL as a common language to mash up content for various sources. So you can integrate many sources, many CMSs or other sources for your Gatsby project, and Gatsby the framework normalizes the data so that you can use one GraphQL language for managing that, searching, querying for that data, and using it on your application or web page. And of course, why we started using Gatsby at first was that the end result of Gatsby, what Gatsby does, it does very fast static web pages, that HTML and CSS files and stuff like that you can easily deploy, and they run completely separated from your backend server. So the output results of that landing page can be served completely independently from Plone. Your Plone server can be under firewall or completely shut down, and that page still runs. And also, the Gatsby is the completely Gatsby can be used for the completely free ecosystem it has behind. Okay, who owns Gatsby? So Gatsby started as a hobby as an open source project, but then the other managed to get funding for the project, and it became a venture capital funded startup. And right now it's still in growing phase. It has a lot of money, so everything is very happy, and they very happy contribute open source and help open source project and help also the community to bring more plugins and more integration from the GatsbyJS framework. And how this develops further, we will see in the future. And how they are planning and trying now starting to make money is they build services to help making the whole concept work. So they're making cloud-based services where you can host those sites and host preview development versions of those sites and so on. So in summary, good things in GatsbyJS, the end results are, as they promised, they are very fast websites, blazingly fast. And they have very good documentation. It's very easy to get started, maybe one of the best out there. And the development experience is very nice. So you get very instant feedback of your changes, of the site, of changes you do, and very easy to set up, and everything seems to just work. That's the experience. And they claim they are very committed to accessibility. So even the decision for the framework have been made in accessibility in mind. So they use, for example, for the sites you build, they use router called React Router. That made I guess it's the original author of the React Router. It's his latest routing framework. and that's focused on accessibility. So because the end page works like a single page web app, it doesn't really load a new address when you click a link, but still our URL will change, and it will make proper notifications for accessibility-wise, that if you're using it with the screen reader will know that now you have changed the page properly. And also that shows on the documentation, so they will cover accessibility very well in their developer documentation. And of course, it's React ecosystem compatible, so everything you know about React can be applied in GatsbyJS projects. Of course, as in any JavaScript project, you may have version conflicts and not all libraries work together, but basically it's compatible. Well, what's not so good, if I wouldn't yet suggest Gatsby for very great projects. So what we saw in the beginning was a demo of a developer server you see when you are doing Gatsby project. That gets instant updates, but when you deploy that site, it will generate a static version of that. That generation will get slower and slower depending on the speed of your backend and amount of the pages. And when if you have thousands of pages, it can take anything for minutes to half an hour or even more. So it becomes a little bit impractical if you have very fastly changing content on a very, very large site. Also, because there's a community around it, the plugins will vary in quality depending who has made it, when it has made it. And because the Gatsby tries to host most of those ecosystem plugins in their own monorepository in GitHub, well, it works in the sense that they have automated releases for all the plugins, so they are version-wise compatible. So always when you install GatsbyJS, you can get all the plugins built from the monorepo with correct versions. But on the other hand, it's very hard to track issues for single plugins and the contributors for single plugins, and that makes it more harder to decide if this plugin is a good one or not. So you need to try out and see if it works the way you wish it to work. And the ugly part. Do you really need 2,000 npm packages just for making an HTML page at the end? And that's kind of up to you. So it depends on your page. If it's just really static HTML only, then maybe it does not make sense. If it helps you that you can use also interactive React components on that page, then it might pay off. And what I need to mention is that end results, you cannot really modify that by hand. Even if it's just static HTML or CSS, there's no sane way to update that without GatsbyJS. And there's danger if you have a very long-running project for years, you maybe need to make sure that you have the original development environment for the original version available when you later make updates, so that you still have all the versions. So in summary, I wouldn't recommend this for everyone. You need to be at least okay for developing with React. If you don't like React, you don't like GatsbyJS. If you don't know React but are okay to learn it, then GatsbyJS documentation is a very good place to start learning React. And the documentation is, their tools are also very, very good tools for learning React. Maybe even if you're just learning React, it may make sense to make your React app in GatsbyJS, because it makes sense, easily understandable routing for your React app. And then GatsbyJS is most easily used if your content is completely public. Because if it's just static HTML pages and CSS and things like that, it's very hard to keep those private if you publish those somewhere. So anything that should be private in Gatsby side should be fetched dynamically during runtime. So then you are really writing React.js app instead of just making a website. And same for the last tick. So it works best if the users only read the site, or maybe you might have used some commenting service for adding comments there. But the users need to have back channel for your backend applications. Then it's sooner, especially with Plone, it might be easier just use Waldo for that use case back then. But if all this is okay, you like React or want to learn it, your content is public, and users mostly just read the site, then GatsbyJS might be a good solution for you. So I need to introduce this term. So if Gatsby is not for everyone, for what is it, and what is the use? What's the problem they try to solve? So they claim is that the CMS framework, CMS market is changing. So we have used that. Okay, well, our dream has been that we can manage everything in our single CMS. Okay, for example, in Plone, we have Plone. Plone is very good CMS for integrating stuff elsewhere. Very good framework for that. For our dream, for example, internet CMS is that we have one CMS and everything is connected to that CMS and everything is minded on the CMS. All the services are around the CMS, we use them through the CMS and their content is fetched to the CMS. The CMS is at the center. But the reality doesn't quite match that. So already you might be at it. We have Plone, but that users are also managing content in many other places than the Plone, and we just display that content through the Plone. So Plone is very like a stupid middleman displaying for that content in some context, of course. And even we have some of those CMCs are also Plone, so we are connected Plone with Plones with Plone. And GatsbyJS claims that you could simplify the stack because all those other services are moving fast. The new service comes and all goes away, and you may not be in charge for deciding what services you can use. For example, in university, it's easy that some communication department chooses to use some tool for designing and maintaining some kind of content, for example, events, for example, and so those would no longer be our Plone. And GatsbyJS claim is that it would be easier and cheaper to integrate everything through GatsbyJS. So you would not need a backend developer to build that integration inside Plone, but instead you would just need a good front-end developer to fetch all that content, all that stuff together with GatsbyJS. So that's what they are claiming, and that's what they kind of mean with the content mesh. So they are no longer. We are no longer in world of single CMSs, master CMSs, while in the world of content mesh, the content is all around us, and CM is just one place we do have content. And we need a solution to get that content for all those sources and display them in the way we like, and maybe in many different places. So that's what they meant with content mesh, if you see that in their marketing materials. So I mentioned that important part of Gatsby is its ecosystem. So they need the ecosystem to build new integrations for new sources. In GatsbyJS, that ecosystem is mostly made by plugins. So the core GatsbyJS is very, very core experience, and all the real functionality for it comes through the plugins. And I would say there are three main categories for those plugins. The most important one maybe is the source plugins. For example, Gatsby Source Plone is the source plugin that integrates source for Plone CMS for GatsbyJS, so that you can use that GatsbyJS GraphQL experience for querying stuff from Plone. And one such source is also Gatsby Source file system that allows you to use just files, images, or content from file system, local file system where your team is developed, and publish those with GatsbyJS. So, well, why should anyone want to use GraphQL to query stuff that's fetched directly from the file system? Why wouldn't just link to that file from file system, let it be there? Well, that's a second class of plugins that's called transformers. So when those content have been sourced in the GatsbyJS in so-called GatsbyJS nodes of content, so there are Plone pages and markdown pages, and maybe some other CMS sources and images, then transformer plugins can enrich that content. For example, for images, there are transformers for making scales of those images, and maybe applying some other effects on those images. And they don't know that for all images, they provide GraphQL interface for the API, so that they only scale, transform those images you are really using in the way you are telling in your GraphQL queries. That's what transformers does. And then the newest categories plugins are called themes. And I will tell more about themes very soon. One example would be like a gallery. If now you have images, you have scales of the images, so a theme can be like pre-configured website, sub-website for gallery, displaying all the images you configure it so. But these categories are not enforced, so Gatsby just provides you API. Any plugin can use any of those API it provides. And for example, in Plone, Gatsby Source Plone, we have source plugin, we source images
image nodes from Plone to the image content sites pages, and then we have actually a transformer that actually fetches the actual images also for those pages as a child of those nodes. So all plugins are technically equal, but they like that you name them properly, that it's easy to find. And they would, in the best case, one plugin only does one thing, so it's easier to compose those plugins at the end. A little more about the themes plugins as I promised. So I would call those theme plugins as maybe an experiment or maintainable boilerplate. So you install a theme, and in they are new plugins, so that they vary very lot of in quality. They are theme plugins that bring you complete site from some CMS, like Plone or Drupal or something, some later CMS. So it just install the theme, and then you have a complete site, very opinionated site, opinions by the designer of that plugin. But they can also provide only single pages or single subsites, single folders on your site, depending on what's the feature of that plugin. And of course, they provide configuration for the features they offer, and of course that varies by the designer of the plugin. And there are two ways to configure them. One is that the options they offer, but then GatsbyJS provides a feature they call shadowing, which means you can override in your local project. You can override any file from that plugin, from the theme plugin, with your own version, and it will use it. It's like that if you was in the Waldo talk or training, it's a similar same thing as what Waldo calls the JBot approach, that you just replace files. But they have went further with that, so that you can even import the original React component and then wrap on your own version of that. So you can also even extend the stuff you find from the. You can even extend the components from the theme plugin and then override it, use your version. So I guess what it's Gatsby's goal that you could, if in Plone we had a term like just bunch of add-ons. So I think that sounds of the Gatsby story. In the best case, you all just install a lot of add-ons, Gatsby add-ons, your theme, and then you add some theme styles for it, and then you have a site with your content on all your sources you need. So they are targeting like ad agencies for this approach, that this will be easy tool for you to build beautiful sites, very fast site from content anywhere. Yeah, I did, to get the t-shirts, Gatsby theme, some t-shirt, I made one example Gatsby theme myself. It was idea just so fancy cover flow of some pages, and this what my configuration looked like. So I let users to configure address for that theme, the address for that cover flow, and then the GraphQL query you use to fetch content for that cover flow. And well, that example shows one nice feature of GraphQL that calls aliasing. So it allows you to. I have this on the all feeds Gatsby blog. All cover pages is the structure I require for my plugin, but with GraphQL aliases, it can get that data from any Gatsby source and transform it for the correct JSON from my plugin. Okay, so now we are finally up to see how this all applies to Plone. And I like to emphasize some core features of Plone that work very well with GatsbyJS. So at first, Plone is very good in hierarchical content management. So in one Plone site, it would be trivial to host content for any amount of individual sites you could build with GatsbyJS. You just create a folder and give the required users permission to edit content in the folder, and then for Plone GatsbyJS plugin can only show that content from that folder for the designer to build the final site. Even better, you don't need to depend on the Plone default content types, pages, images, and so forth, but you can extend those content types with the fields you need, or even define completely new content types to have more structural data to give more options for the content authors and the theme designers. And one example in my demo was that for the images and pages, I added that CSS field that was just a string, but allowed the content author to add his favorite class names for Bootstrap from Bootstrap utilities to change the outlook of that element. And well, Plone has workflow system, so you can have both drafts and public pages inside the same folders. And only when the page is published, then it will be showed on the final page. And also, you can use Plone publication dates effectively with GatsbyJS, so that when today's version of the site will not show the pages that will be released only tomorrow. So I think we have sometimes had the issue that people don't understand that if you publish a page on Plone and make it be effective only on tomorrow, they are scared that why I can still access the address of that page without logging in, because the page is already public, but the effective date will only protect it to be showing on sitemap and search results and navigation. But if that site is created with GatsbyJS, then that page will really be included on the end site only after it's effective. And of course, nothing of this would be possible without the awesome REST API we have in Plone. So these are my favorite use cases with GatsbyJS and Plone. So as said, you might have your beautiful Volto-powered Plone CMS. You have used hours and hours to build your favorite Volto experience that matches your brand. And then you get one task, one order for completely different looking site. And it might be very expensive to build that team inside, and you would not like to bloat your Volto team with the designs for that site. So then you could just make a small, let your users author the content inside your Volto Plone in specific folder, and then make a Gatsby spin-off site from that folder. Also, you might already have a React app somewhere, and if you would have made that React app with GatsbyJS, then you could use, with GatsbyJS, you could use Plone as a CMS backend for those areas where you need to have user-authored content. For example, we are publishing our current curriculums at the university with GatsbyJS that gets its content from predefined from not Plone, but our course system. But in the future, we want to also add some custom information for those courses, images and some marketing information, things like that. So in the future we can fetch those from Plone, and then merge the data from our course systems with data from Plone to make the final site. And something I call here content configuration management is maybe you want to author original content in Plone. Maybe you get, for example, you want to show which lectures are in which rooms currently. So you have different systems. You have a system for showing those, where you can get those information, but then you need a way to configure those informations. Well, we have I would call it digital signage solution, where a hall has a display which should show only the information for the rooms around the hall. So in Plone, we could have a folder for that hall, and that folder we would add. We could have slides, pages like slides, and every slide we would define what room we should show on this slide. So the Plone would not have information of which lectures are in which rooms, but Plone will decide what rooms we will show on the display of that hall. And then when the Gatsby site will be built, then the Gatsby plugins will combine the information. It will get the configuration information from Plone, and then getting the real information from the original source and combining those. And what are the main challenges using GatsbyJS Plone? So you will lose what you see is what you get experience. So editors will use the Plone interface for managing the content, and it will look completely different at the end. Another one is that you need some system to build those Gatsby sites in some interval. So you practically need your IT department to have CI infrastructure for building those sites. And just by accident, these are the challenges that the Gatsby Incorporated company is building their cloud solutions for. So they are providing a solution called Gatsby Preview, where you can see the preview of the site while they're developing it. And then they are also providing hosting services and these release management services. They are, yeah. So what's the status of Gatsby source Plone right now? Yes, so we have incremental Plone content sourcing, meaning that when you run Gatsby build incrementally, one build after another, if you only fetch the new content from Plone, it will speed up the build a little bit. As I said many times, you can choose the folder you use for that site. And as we see in the demo, we can also reach the content with images, and also even inline images and link to the files. And that's needs a little bit more, well, it's a little bit more difficult. In the Volto talk, we saw that they only dumped all the HTML inside the Volto page. In Gatsby, we experimented and it's been working so far quite well that we actually can deconstruct the HTML and we make it in real React components so that you can replace images inside that HTML with Gatsby, special Gatsby images that are progressive loading, and with Gatsby links that have the features of Gatsby routing. And as we saw in the demo, we are ready for live updates for your development server when Plone is ready for that. What is still missing? Out of the box we only support for the main content types for the convents on rich text and image and files. So we only search rich text for field names text and images for field names image and files for field named file. And make it that better, it's only a matter of someone requiring that and supporting developing that. And in Gatsby, you can use the same plugin multiple times. And that kind of works for Plone. You can have multiple Plone plugins having content from different Plone sites. But currently, they all go in the same namespace and can override each other. We know how to fix that, but it would just be a lot of work. So it can be done if required, but needs someone to do that. And how I would recommend getting started with GatsbyJS and Plone is basically just to follow the standard GatsbyJS documentation. Don't go directly do what we have done with Plone. Just start from the official Gatsby documentation. Install GatsbyJS, follow their starters. Once you are familiar and you think now, okay, I like GatsbyJS, I would like to use it more, then you install the Plone plugin. And maybe configure it at first with some existing Plone site, like the demo offered by Git Concept. And then once you start the Gatsby development server, you will have an option to open the so-called GraphQL Explorer to see what kind of data you can get from that site. And if you have followed the GatsbyJS tutorials, you should be now familiar to looking for, what kind of data I can find from Plone and use it on your GatsbyJS project. So I think that would be the most easiest way to get started with it. And once you're more familiar with it, then you can go more for more resources and see what you have done for Plone. And if you get stuck, don't try to solve everything by yourself or ask help. There are some known difficult steps to go around, or where you can get stuck. So ask help from us, and we try to help our best. And these slides will be online after the talk. So I added few more resources. So you can go to look for more information. So I have left some time for questions as proposed. And while you are thinking about the questions, I advertise 2 more talks. So tomorrow, my latest Summer of Code student, Alok Kumar, is presenting his work this summer he made for so-called Gatsby Preview for Plone. So we kind of made Plone mostly compatible with that Gatsby Preview solution. It's not officially compatible, but it's been now, if someone really needs that, it can be made compatible now very easily. So it had those features for getting live updates from Plone while you are developing a Gatsby site. So if you would be able to run a Gatsby development server somewhere on publicly, then you would have like live preview of your site. And then on Friday, I will have another talk, very technical talk, where I saw the backend that is required for that feature to work. So now we have time for questions.
Yeah. Just raise your hand and I'll come run with the microphone if there are any questions.
In the long run, like in a few years from now, could you imagine that at some point we merge like GatsbyJS, the approach that Gatsby takes, and what we're doing with Volto?
I don't see any good reasons for that because the use cases are so different. Gatsby clearly goes for decoupled static websites, and making them dependent on backend like Volto does would be counter-effective, I think. So I don't see any clear reason for that. It would be a lot of work. It might be fun, but I'm not quite that sure. I trust in the long run, I'll trust more in the Volto than I trust for GatsbyJS.
Does Gatsby have any sort of dynamic sources, like plugins that get stuff not statically?
Well, GatsbyJS as self doesn't have, but because it's compatible with the other ecosystem, React ecosystem, of course, the app end solution, what you are building is just a React application. So you can build features that fetch live updates from other live sources, and they have even documentation for that, and the possible live update systems have documentation for that. One of my favorite is Hasura.io. It has very good blog post on how you integrate it to Gatsby, and they have even screencast how you make like live updates from Gatsby for that. Hasura.io is a GraphQL layer for Postgres, to put it simply. Very, very good one. So with just data in PostgreSQL and putting Hasura on top of that, you have high quality GraphQL interface for your data that you could then easily use with Gatsby with plugin called Gatsby Source GraphQL.
Any more questions? Right.
Hi. Thank you for your great work on this. My question is, if everything is static, it shouldn't be too difficult to make a search function on it, isn't? Or is it?
Yes, it's possible. So there are plugins for implementing search with a few different ways. They are just not popular that I didn't add them as a separate category. There are two approaches. One of them built you with the static index with your site, little bit like Themes documentation does. The other ones are ones that use service, some search service, and while you are building your Gatsby site, it will then send build index at the service, and then use that live service when from the static site you are browsing. So of course, services may be pay, you might need to pay for the service, but that static one is free. That way you have the index with your site. But of course, if you have big index, then it will slow down the loading of your page. I see hand risen there.
Okay. Yeah, on my way.
Hey, one question. You said you just generate data which is effective, so it's like visible in the search and Plone. Since this is a time which, yeah, can be in the future, but there's probably no content editing which can trigger the build. How do you do that? You run it like once every hour or whatever?
Yes, you need to have.
I mean, otherwise you will never be noticed of this.
Yes, you need to have scheduled builds.
Yeah.
And that's a problem if you have a huge site with thousands of pages. Then you no longer can build like once per hour or once per 5 minutes or things like that.
Okay.
And of course, I said you need an infrastructure for making those builds. Our infrastructure is we are using GitLab CI for our version management. So GitLab comes with its own CI and also comes with GitLab pages where you can publish those pages.
Thank you.
Now you get JSON data from Plone content. Would it also be feasible to get like complete HTML from, for instance, the Plone side. I'm thinking to basically, for documentation purposes, to say like, this is how this page looks, and you fetch not only the content but also the CSS and all the surrounding things from Plone or another service.
Yeah, of course it's possible. It probably needs some other. I don't think it makes sense for us to build it inside our plugin, but maybe there is already a plugin that fetches complete pages and then serve those HTMLs as through GraphQL.
Anyone else?
Of course, that would only work in the same way if the site is public.
Okay. Then I would like to ask a big round of applause for Asko Soukka.